2025 car market crash is here, and it is way worse than you think. Dealerships are drowning in unsold inventory, prices remain sky high, and buyers are left wondering if they'll ever afford a new car again. But why are prices still climbing? What's behind the wave of dealership bankruptcies? And most importantly, how will this crisis impact your next car purchase? Stick around, you won't want to miss this. What's happening? Imagine waiting months for a car only to hear, "Sorry, it's still stuck in production." That's not just a hiccup, it's a system-wide failure. The crash of 2025 didn't happen overnight. One of the earliest warning signs was the fragility of the global supply chain. Over the last few years, disruptions caused by semiconductor shortages, rising raw material costs, and pandemic-related factory shutdowns created bottlenecks. Automakers struggled to procure essential components, delaying production and deliveries. The semiconductor shortage alone crippled manufacturing. These tiny chips, critical for modern car systems, were in such short supply that even high-demand models sat incomplete on production lines. Manufacturers like Ford and General Motors were forced to halt production temporarily, resulting in billions of dollars in lost revenue. Beyond semiconductors, rising costs for steel, aluminum, and lithium, key materials for electric vehicles, further exacerbated delays. The consequences of these disruptions were far-reaching. Production schedules were pushed back, inventory dwindled, and dealerships were left scrambling to meet consumer demand. What started as a temporary setback spiraled into a structural challenge, laying the foundation for the broader market crash. But supply chains were just the beginning. Economic pressures were already brewing in the background. Economic pressures and inflation. What happens when the price of everything rises, but your paycheck doesn't? The car market learns the hard way. While supply chains faltered, inflation soared. Since 2019, inflation rates have climbed steadily, leading to higher costs for both automakers and consumers. Add to that rising interest rates set by the Federal Reserve to curb inflation, and the result is a perfect storm of economic pressure. For consumers, this meant car loans became more expensive. The average interest rate on auto loans exceeded 7% in 2025. Pushing monthly payments for new cars well above $700. Many buyers, especially those from working-class households, were priced out of the market entirely. Even for middle-class families, the decision to purchase a vehicle became a difficult trade-off with other necessities like housing and groceries. For automakers, inflation drove up production costs. From raw materials to labor, every component of building a car became more expensive. Manufacturers were left with two choices: absorb the costs and risk profitability, or pass them on to consumers. Most chose the latter, setting the stage for the price disconnect that would follow. With consumers struggling and production costs surging, the cracks in the system widened. But the missteps didn't end there. Overproduction made things even worse. Overproduction and inventory mismanagement. Too much of a good thing isn't always good. Just ask the dealerships drowning in unsold cars. As the automotive industry tried to rebound from early pandemic slowdowns, many manufacturers overestimated consumer demand. Hoping to capitalize on a perceived post-pandemic surge, they ramped up production, churning out vehicles at record rates. But as economic pressures mounted, demand didn't meet expectations, leaving dealerships with an overwhelming surplus of inventory. Dealerships that were once buzzing with activity turned eerily quiet. Overflow lots became a common sight, with rows of unsold cars gathering dust. Some dealerships even resorted to renting farmland and parking unused vehicles in fields, creating a visual reminder of the market's dire state. This overproduction wasn't limited to sedans or luxury cars. It extended to staples like trucks and SUVs. Models like the Ford F-150 and Toyota Tundra, once hot sellers, lingered on lots for months. The financial burden of holding unsold inventory, coupled with maintenance and flooring costs, strained dealerships further. And yet, as unsold cars piled up, consumers were shifting gears, literally and figuratively. Changing preferences reshaped the market landscape in ways few predicted. Shifting consumer preferences. What if the car of your dreams no longer matched the car of your needs? As the 2025 car market crash unfolded, it became clear that consumer preferences were evolving faster than manufacturers could adapt. The rise of electric vehicles and hybrid cars reshaped demand, leaving traditional gas-powered models in the dust. Consumers who once sought reliability and power in combustion engines now prioritize fuel efficiency, sustainability, and cutting-edge technology. But the shift wasn't just about EVs. Younger generations, particularly millennials and Gen Z, were rethinking car ownership altogether. Subscription services, ride-sharing platforms, and car-sharing models gained popularity, especially in urban areas where owning a car felt more like a burden than a convenience. This trend caught automakers off guard, as their production strategies were rooted in outdated assumptions about consumer behavior. Even rural buyers, historically loyal to trucks and SUVs, began exploring alternatives as gas prices remained high. While this shift presented opportunities for innovation, it also left dealerships struggling to sell models designed for an audience that no longer existed. The cracks in the market had widened into chasms, and the effects of these foundational issues were about to ripple across the entire automotive industry. Unsold cars, the growing inventory crisis. What happens when brand new cars turn into liabilities instead of assets? Dealerships across the country are filled with shiny, unsold vehicles sitting idle for months. Once symbols of opportunity, these cars now symbolize a growing problem. Overflowing lots have become makeshift graveyards for unsold inventory, and the sight is shocking. Rows of pristine vehicles collecting dust instead of hitting the roads. Take the Ford F-150, America's best-selling truck for decades. In its heyday, it was snatched up within days of arriving on dealership lots. Today, some models are sitting unsold for over 200 days. This pattern is not isolated. Toyota Tundras and Ram 1500s, known for their versatility and dependability, are facing similar fates. Dealerships are running out of space, renting overflow lots, and even parking cars on unused farmland. The overstock isn't just a logistical headache, it's a financial strain. Every unsold vehicle represents a tied-up investment, draining dealerships of their resources. Dealerships must pay for insurance, maintenance, and the cost of holding these cars on their lots. The longer they sit, the more money they lose, creating a vicious cycle. The visible impact of this crisis is undeniable, but the unseen implications are even more concerning. Overflow lots, increased inventory costs, and vehicles with declining value paint a grim picture of the state of the car market. As dealerships battle overflowing lots, another factor is fueling this crisis: a stark disconnect between the price of cars and what consumers can afford. Price disconnect. Why are car prices still soaring when inventory is at an all-time high? Car prices have risen dramatically, leaving many Americans priced out of the market. Since 2019, average car prices have jumped by an eye-watering 42%. This surge has created a massive gap between what cars cost and what buyers are willing or able to pay. Consider the Toyota Tundra Platinum Crew Max, which was once within reach of middle-class families. Its current price tag of $75,000 is a stark contrast to just a few years ago, when it was considered an affordable option. Similar price increases are affecting vehicles like the Ford Bronco Raptor and Ram 1500. Once popular for their blend of performance and value, these trucks are now priced like luxury vehicles. This disconnect has led to a consumer standoff. Buyers who would have eagerly purchased vehicles are now either delaying their purchases or opting for cheaper alternatives. Even aggressive dealership discounts aren't enough to move the needle. Offers like zero-interest financing or cashback bonuses are failing to attract buyers when the initial prices are still beyond reach. Manufacturing costs, supply chain disruptions, and inflation are all contributing to the price surge. Yet, the market's failure to adjust to consumer realities is exacerbating the inventory crisis. Cars are sitting unsold, and buyers are left with fewer, less affordable options. While buyers struggle with sticker shock, dealerships are left scrambling to find solutions to their mounting problems. Struggling dealerships. Can dealerships survive the crushing weight of unsold cars? Dealerships are the front lines of the car market crash, and they're under immense pressure. Every car that remains unsold becomes a financial liability. Dealerships rely on financing to maintain their inventory, and as these cars sit idle, the costs pile up. Flooring costs, essentially the interest on loans dealerships take out to finance their stock, are becoming a financial burden that many cannot sustain. In an effort to move inventory, dealerships are resorting to extreme measures. Discounts of thousands of dollars, 0% financing offers, and even added perks like free maintenance plans are being advertised aggressively. Yet these efforts are only marginally effective as the root problem, unaffordable car prices, remains unresolved. The financial strain is forcing dealerships to make difficult decisions. Many are laying off staff, cutting marketing budgets, and scaling back operations to stay afloat. Smaller, family-run dealerships are particularly vulnerable, lacking the financial reserves of larger chains. For some, bankruptcy has become an unavoidable reality. The ripple effects of struggling dealerships extend far beyond their doors. Local economies that depend on these businesses for jobs and tax revenue are feeling the strain. Towns that once thrived on the success of their dealerships are now grappling with the fallout of this financial crisis. The desperate measures taken by dealerships reveal the severity of the crisis, but the hidden burden of negative equity is adding another layer of complexity for buyers and sellers alike. The hidden burden of negative equity. What happens when your car loan becomes a trap you can't escape? Negative equity has emerged as one of the most troubling aspects of the current car market crisis. Simply put, negative equity occurs when the amount owed on a car loan exceeds the vehicle's current value. On average, American car buyers now face over $7,200 in negative equity per vehicle, a staggering figure that's wreaking havoc on personal finances. For those looking to trade in their cars, negative equity presents a nearly insurmountable challenge. When the trade-in value of a vehicle is less than the outstanding loan balance, buyers must roll over that deficit into their next purchase. This means taking on even higher monthly payments and digging themselves deeper into financial strain. The problem is cyclical. Buyers with negative equity struggle to trade up to newer vehicles, often settling for older models that are less efficient and more expensive to maintain. This not only impacts their finances, but also delays the adoption of newer, greener technologies like electric vehicles. The result is a market gridlocked by debt, with consumers unable to make progress toward more sustainable and affordable transportation options. For dealerships, negative equity compounds the existing inventory crisis. Buyers hesitant to trade in their cars due to debt are staying out of the market, reducing demand for new vehicles. This lack of activity further exacerbates the issue, leaving dealerships with even more unsold cars. The weight of negative equity is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's a significant barrier to recovery in a market already overwhelmed by challenges. Dealership struggles and closures. What happens when the backbone of the car market begins to crumble? Look no further than the dealerships fighting to survive. The 2025 car market crash didn't just affect automakers, it sent shockwaves through the dealership network, long considered the lifeline of the automotive industry. Dealerships, the essential middlemen connecting manufacturers to buyers, found themselves caught in a perfect storm of financial strain. The primary issue revolved around flooring costs, the interest dealerships pay to finance the unsold vehicles sitting on their lots. With cars lingering for 6 months or more, these costs ballooned, eroding profitability. Dealerships that once thrived on rapid inventory turnover were now facing unprecedented challenges. Vehicles like the Ford F-150 and Toyota Tundra, once guaranteed sellers, became financial liabilities as their popularity waned amidst rising prices. Desperation drove many dealerships to extreme measures. Massive price cuts, zero-interest financing, and aggressive promotions became the norm as businesses fought to move inventory. Some dealerships even turned to unconventional solutions, such as offering free maintenance packages or additional trade-in value for older vehicles to entice buyers. Despite these efforts, the disconnect between car prices and consumer budgets proved insurmountable. The fallout was devastating. Dealership closures began to ripple across the country, hitting small towns and suburban areas particularly hard. These closures left employees jobless and communities reeling as local economies depended heavily on the dealership network. Ancillary businesses such as tire shops, car wash services, and local advertisers also suffered as their customer base dwindled. Beyond the immediate economic consequences, the cultural impact was palpable. Dealerships were more than just places to buy cars. They were fixtures in their communities, sponsoring little league teams, supporting local charities, and serving as gathering spots for car enthusiasts. Their absence created a void, both economically and socially. But dealerships were only the tip of the iceberg. The real pain was felt across the entire supply chain. Supply chain breakdown. A single break in the supply chain can bring an industry to its knees. What happens when the entire chain begins to collapse? The automotive industry's supply chain, already strained by years of disruption, reached a breaking point during the 2025 crash. This complex web of global manufacturers, parts suppliers, and logistics providers found itself unable to adapt to the rapid changes in the market. At the heart of the issue was overproduction. Automakers, anticipating a post-pandemic surge in demand, ramped up production in the preceding years. When demand fell short, the result was an overabundance of vehicles and parts, with suppliers sitting on unsellable inventory. Factories slowed production, and many were forced to close temporarily or permanently. One glaring example was the semiconductor industry. These critical components, essential for modern vehicles' advanced features, were in short supply just a few years earlier. By 2025, the pendulum had swung in the opposite direction, with an oversupply that further destabilized the market. Battery manufacturers, too, faced similar challenges as electric vehicle production slowed in response to waning demand. Shipping and logistics companies bore the brunt of the supply chain breakdown. Ports, warehouses, and trucking networks saw a sharp decline in activity as fewer cars moved from factories to dealerships. The resulting inactivity caused widespread layoffs and operational losses, compounding the economic impact. The supply chain issues also highlighted the fragility of just-in-time manufacturing, a strategy where parts are produced and delivered only as needed to reduce costs. While efficient in theory, this approach proved disastrous in the face of market volatility. Many automakers began re-evaluating their reliance on just-in-time systems, exploring alternatives such as localized manufacturing and diversified sourcing to mitigate future risks. While the supply chain grappled with systemic issues, the human cost of the crash became impossible to ignore. Job losses and workforce displacement. What happens when an industry that employs millions starts to crumble? For thousands, it meant losing not just a job, but a way of life. The automotive industry has long been one of the largest employers in the United States. From factory workers assembling vehicles to salespeople closing deals on showroom floors, millions of jobs depend on the health of this sector. The 2025 crash, however, brought widespread layoffs and workforce displacement that devastated families and communities. Major automakers like Nissan, Ford, and General Motors announced significant workforce reductions. Nissan alone eliminated 9,000 positions globally, and others followed suit. Entire factories were shuttered, leaving skilled workers with few options for comparable employment. The Midwest, often referred to as the automotive belt, was particularly hard hit, with cities like Detroit experiencing a resurgence of the economic struggles that defined previous decades. The job losses didn't stop at the assembly lines. Suppliers, logistics firms, and even marketing agencies that supported automakers faced downsizing or closures. Dealership employees, from sales staff to mechanics, also found themselves out of work as dealerships shuttered across the country. For many, these jobs were more than just paychecks. They represented stability and pride. The ripple effects extended beyond individual workers. Entire communities, particularly in regions reliant on automotive manufacturing, felt the impact. Local businesses that catered to factory workers and dealership employees saw a sharp decline in revenue. Schools, healthcare providers, and municipal services faced funding challenges as tax revenues plummeted. The crash didn't just dismantle an industry, it dismantled livelihoods and communities. And while workers faced uncertainty, consumers were grappling with a new reality. Cars were no longer affordable for many. Consumer affordability and negative equity. Imagine buying a car only to find out it's worth far less than what you owe. Welcome to the new normal of negative equity. For consumers, the car market crash wasn't just an economic inconvenience, it was a financial trap. Negative equity, where car owners owe more on their auto loans than their vehicles are worth, became a widespread issue. The average negative equity amount surpassed $7,000, leaving many buyers unable to trade in or sell their cars without incurring significant financial losses. Rising interest rates compounded the problem. By 2025, auto loan rates exceeded 7%, pushing monthly payments for new cars into unaffordable territory for many families. The average monthly payment for a new car climbed past $700, and for some luxury or electric models, payments exceeded $1,000. This affordability crisis forced consumers to make difficult choices. Many held onto older vehicles longer, avoiding the higher costs of new cars, but facing increased maintenance expenses. Others turned to the used car market, driving up prices and further limiting options for budget-conscious buyers. The impact of negative equity wasn't just financial, it was psychological. For many, owning a car is a symbol of independence and achievement. The inability to upgrade or afford a reliable vehicle created a sense of stagnation and frustration, further eroding consumer confidence. Additionally, the trend of rolling negative equity into new loans created a cycle of debt that left buyers even more vulnerable to future economic downturns. With dealerships closing, supply chains faltering, and consumers drowning in debt, the 2025 crash revealed a stark reality. This was no no ordinary market correction. It was a systemic failure with far-reaching consequences. Lessons from the past. Comparing to previous crashes. What can history teach us about the 2025 car market crash? The answers might surprise you. Economic crises in the automotive industry are not new. The Great Recession of 2008 saw similar ripples across dealerships, manufacturers, and supply chains. However, the current crash presents a unique blend of challenges, combining the scars of a global pandemic, unprecedented price hikes, and a dramatic shift in consumer behavior. One key difference is the speed at which this crash unfolded. In 2008, the decline was gradual, giving businesses and policymakers time to react. The 2025 crash, however, struck with an intensity that left little room for preparation. As unsold cars piled up and dealerships struggled to stay afloat, the industry was forced to acknowledge a harsh truth. The traditional model of selling and financing vehicles may no longer be sustainable. The reliance on just-in-time manufacturing and global supply chains, while efficient, has proven fragile. Automakers and dealers now face an urgent need to rethink their strategies, drawing lessons from previous crises. Diversified sourcing, local manufacturing, and a focus on adaptability may be the keys to surviving future disruptions. While history offers lessons, the real question is how to adapt in the face of the rapidly evolving challenges of today's market. Technology's role in recovery. Could the same technology that contributed to this crisis also be the solution? The rise of automation, artificial intelligence, and advanced analytics is reshaping every aspect of the automotive industry. While these technologies initially added to the cost of manufacturing, they also hold the potential to transform the industry's recovery. Electric vehicles, for instance, are at the forefront of this technological shift. Automakers like Tesla, General Motors, and Rivian are leveraging AI to streamline production processes, improve battery efficiency, and create smarter, more sustainable vehicles. Similarly, advancements in data analytics are helping dealerships predict market trends, manage inventory, and target buyers more effectively. Even traditional automakers are embracing change. Ford and Toyota are investing in connected car technologies, integrating features that enhance user experience and increase long-term value. From self-driving capabilities to predictive maintenance, these innovations aim to rebuild consumer confidence and attract buyers back to the market. Beyond production, technology is reshaping how cars are sold. Online platforms are offering virtual showrooms, personalized financing options, and even home delivery of vehicles. These shifts cater to tech-savvy consumers while reducing the overhead costs associated with traditional dealerships. While technology offers hope, the bigger challenge lies in aligning these innovations with evolving consumer expectations. The shift in consumer mindset. Are buyers ready to redefine what it means to own a car? The answer could shape the industry's future. The 2025 crash has forced consumers to reassess their priorities. For many, the rising cost of car ownership has sparked a shift away from traditional buying habits. Instead of purchasing new vehicles outright, buyers are exploring alternatives like leasing, subscription services, and car-sharing platforms. Subscription-based car models, for instance, allow consumers to access a range of vehicles for a monthly fee covering maintenance, insurance, and roadside assistance. This model appeals to younger buyers who prioritize flexibility and convenience over long-term ownership. Similarly, ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft are becoming viable alternatives for urban dwellers, reducing the need for individual car ownership altogether. The growing emphasis on sustainability is also influencing consumer choices. Eco-conscious buyers are prioritizing EVs and hybrids, even as prices remain high. Government incentives and tax breaks are playing a crucial role in making these vehicles more accessible, but the industry must do more to bridge the affordability gap. As consumer preferences evolve, automakers must adapt their strategies to meet these new demands. But what does this mean for the global landscape of the industry? Global implications and future opportunities. Could the 2025 car market crash reshape the global automotive industry? The possibilities are as vast as they are uncertain. The ripple effects of the crash extend far beyond US borders. Global automakers like Volkswagen, BMW, and Hyundai are grappling with how to navigate this turbulent market while maintaining their foothold in the US. At the same time, emerging markets are seizing the opportunity to fill gaps left by established players. China, for instance, continues to lead in EV innovation, leveraging its dominance in battery production to expand its influence in the global automotive market. European automakers are focusing on luxury EVs, targeting high-income buyers who remain less affected by the crash. Meanwhile, startups are stepping into the spotlight, introducing disruptive technologies that challenge the status quo. The crash has also sparked debates around global trade policies. Tariffs, subsidies, and regulatory standards are being reevaluated as governments seek to protect domestic industries while fostering innovation. These shifts could pave the way for new alliances and rivalries, shaping the future of international automotive trade. As the dust settles, one thing is clear: the 2025 crash is not just a crisis, but an opportunity to redefine the automotive industry for the better. The 2025 car market crash has changed everything, from how cars are made to how we think about owning them. But the story doesn't end here. As the industry evolves, new challenges and opportunities will emerge, reshaping our roads and redefining our lives. What do you think? Will the car market bounce back stronger than ever, or is this the beginning of a long road to recovery? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.